let us take a deep dive into the curious phenomenon called the survivors genre. You run around in circles for hours on end in a map smaller than my bathroom, avoiding enemies while fire shoots from your ass. What's not to like? Is this even a game? What possesses people to play it? And more importantly, which ones should you play? All will be answered and more. But let's start at the beginning. Vampire Survivors, the game that started it all. The premise is simple. Your blob of pixels in the center of the screen here gets assaulted by an increasing number of other pixelated blobs while you shoot fire and lightning from your all the while dancing around the screen either till you perish or occasionally you survive. To break down the mysteries of the survivors genre, we have to fully understand it. Each little part plays a role, all a cog in a much larger, mysterious, pixelated machine. And along the way, we shall look at and highlight other, more accomplished survivor games for us to sink our teeth in. Let's start with the obvious, lack of any kind of direct controller input, other than aimlessly wandering around the screen avoiding enemies, like me avoiding conspiracy theorists at a flat earth convention. Take Soulstone Survivors. One could say a direct evolution of Vampire Survivors, but better. Why is it better? Aside from the obvious better graphics, it too has endless hordes of monsters, attacking a poor defenseless protagonist who out of necessity needs to sell his soul and become death incarnate. But unlike Vampire Survivors, you're not just aimlessly wandering. No, this game adds a much needed dash. Dash. To run or travel somewhere in a great hurry. I am dashing. And it might not sound like much, but this one small addition adds that little bit of needed input to make you feel useful again. But this is but a small evolution in a genre that has made big strides forwards. Nordic Ashes is another good example. At first glance, you would be forgiven in thinking that Nordic Ashes is a direct clone of Vampire Survivors. Hordes of monsters everywhere, this time in a Nordic setting. More wandering around the map, but there is a key difference. An important part of any Survivors type game is its build setup. Let's take our poor defenseless protagonist from earlier, assaulted from all sides with nary a weapon to his name other than this. Only to become, like we mentioned earlier, death incarnate. How did this happen, you wonder? One word: wise life choices. That's 3, but... Our protagonist has gained experience and gold by taking down his opponent, robbing them blind, and thus being able to afford new weaponry, which can then be used in his ongoing crusade against evil, or really anything on the screen with it. These could all be poor farmers for all we know. More XP leads to more weapons, and just like in real life, they'll be floating all around him, wildly stabbing, torching, and electrocuting bystanders. The weapons our protagonist picks are of vital import because of the so-called synergies. In case you wonder what a synergy is, Jason Statham and The Rock in Hobbs and Shaw is the greatest example of synergy in the modern world. Thus, weapons are picked, which together form a whole greater than the sum of its parts, creating said killing machine. Vampire Survivors does a good job with this, but it's bare bones and sorely in need of an update. But Nordic Ashes swoops in to save the day, adding gear and relics to be equipped and upgraded at will, creating even more diverse builds and variety. Another good example is Army of Ruin. Similar to Nordic Ashes, Army of Ruin could at first glance easily be considered another vampire clone with nicer graphics. A single lone brave protagonist against an onslaught of hordes of evil. But you'd be mistaken. Again, it comes with some small but meaningful modifications, this time in the form of enormous amounts of unlockable weapons, trinkets, and features, which can be used as a wise man once said,
kick names, take ass.
Yeah, that's right. We continue our journey into the depths of the survivors genre. When we talk about builds, weapons, trinkets, equipment, and magic is important. Picking up gems, chasing levels, and unlocking weapon after weapon, upgrade after upgrade is a recognized form of meditation. Survival meditation, look it up. Guiding your character through waves of more and more numerous and tougher enemies, while slowly everything around you fades away. It can be glorious. But there's something equally important we haven't talked about yet. Characters and classes. A survivors game without characters or classes would be like a toilet without a door. Everything would be exposed. Vampire Survivors does a decent job at it, but there's a better alternative. Imagine a world where you don't just have one character, not 2 characters, but 3 characters at the same time. You heard it right. You play indeed 3 characters, each with their own weapons, upgrades, and unlockables. But like that's not enough, there's more. Each of them also has synergy with each other. Weapons, abilities, and combos all feeding into each other. I understand this is hard to comprehend. The sheer possibilities are staggering, but I assure you, all of this is real in yet another zombie survivor. Which leads me to my next point. Let me ask you this. What makes a survivors game? After the leveling, characters, classes, synergies, and everything else we've already talked about so far, let me show you. controlled chaos. Nothing's better than narrowly escaping a horde of zombies by blowing them up with a perfectly timed unexpected ability, picking up that massive XP they leave behind, triggering a level up and health boost to then happily proceed kicking. In this category, I have two contenders for you. Dead Must Die, a curious combination of Hades, complete with gods and goddesses providing you with powers, Diablo, and the Vampire Survivor. Everything the latter does, this game improves upon. Combinations, monsters, levels, gorgeous pixel art, but most of all, tremendous amounts of chaos. Between the monsters, the weapons and the magic, there is not one bit of real estate on screen left untouched. But then, lastly, there's of course one more thing we haven't touched upon yet, before we'll go over the internationally recognized top 3 of Survivor's games. Survival games by many are looked upon as pure chaos, a jumble of pixels, mindless busy work that any 3-year-old can do, but nothing can be further from the truth. This here might look like mindless milling about, but this too takes much more planning and strategy than you might think. How do you escape out of this death trap? Where is the enemy congregation thinnest? Is that an escape right there, or does that lead us to certain death? And most importantly, like and subscribe. All questions that have to be answered in split seconds. Again, I have 2 recommendations for you in this category. Hall of Torment. To the untrained eye, this might easily be mistaken for Vampire Survivor in a Diablo coat, which is not that far from the truth, to be honest, but it has much more to offer. Aside from a wide variety of characters to choose from, all with wildly different playstyles, an enormous depth in class build, and big level variety, the game itself is difficult but easy to pick up, with lots of rewarding complexity to be interesting to both noob and veterans alike. And 2, Brotato. Brotato is good. I consider this game for one of those coveted top 3 spots we will be talking about soon, but it narrowly missed out. Again, at first glance, this game looks simple, to the point of being ridiculous. You play as a potato. It doesn't get simpler than that. But writing this game off would be a mistake. The amount of depth is staggering, which is strange because it's all about potatoes. But there are 62 characters, read potatoes, to unlock, all with completely different playstyles. Take for example the engineer potato, focus on building structures like turrets, or the demon potato, who converts harvested materials into max HP. Very useful indeed. How about the soldier potato? He gets boosts in attack speed and damage while being stationary. Every one of them plays completely different. Combine that with the hundreds of items and weapons, and that gets you a whole lot of potato action. Potato salad, mashed potato, baked potato, it's all in your hands. Plus, look at how adorable he looks with all those little guns on his back. So, now that we have a better idea of what makes a good survival map, let's take a look at the top 3, which has been unanimously recognized by the Worldwide Survival Map Federation, so there's no point arguing. Number 3. Now this one might be a bit controversial. It's still in early access and it does some things differently than the classic Survivors games. For one, we now have control over our main weapon, which makes it a bit more of a twin-stick shooter. But not to worry, you have absolutely no control over anything else in 20 minutes till dawn. Kidding, that's a joke. The main weapon, however, also has a limited amount of bullets, after which it needs reloading. Very realistic. If you stop firing, the reload happens early. Alternatively, empty the gun and you trigger the reload. Combine this with the fact that shooting your main weapon slows your movement, and this adds a whole bunch of interesting wrinkles to your classic Survivors gameplay. And there's of course the fact that the game looks amazing. It's smooth and the pixel art is gorgeous. And as with all of these, there are many characters to choose from, with many different interesting builds to dive into. Number 2. Another one that shakes up that traditional Survivors gameplay. And I have to say, in the beginning, I wasn't into it. Upon first inspection, it looked to be following the Survivors genre a little too close. Guiding my ninja from enemy to enemy, the first few minutes were very slow. Leveling didn't happen fast enough, and I was ready to write Rogue Janesha off. But somewhere along the way of that first level, things shifted, and my ninja became a vulnerable powerhouse of magic and groin stomping, and I got into it. But then, things changed. The level ended and a world map opened up, giving me a choice between different types of levels. Rewards, boss battles, and more. Think Slay the Spire. This little change completely won me over. The monotony that sometimes sets in with these type of games due to wave after wave in the same level is completely gone. Instead, you have bite-sized levels with different types of objectives, and most importantly, your powers carry over. And then there was number 1. Again, this one adds some interesting changes to that well-established survival map rule set. All the basics are here. Characters, weapons, items, and non-stop alien swarm assaults, including massive bosses. It all feels great. But Galactic Survivors makes one big change. Walls. Nay, every wall, in fact, can be removed, and it changes up the gameplay more than you'd expect. Having a wall at your back to hold off an onslaught of enemies makes all the difference, even more so when you can hack through it to make a quick getaway when needed. Important to note is that hacking through walls takes time, so it becomes a skillful art to decide when it's better to actually break through that wall and when to make a run for it. or you might just get caught with your pants down. To make matters more complicated, these walls contain minerals that can be mined, like gold for buying weaponry in between levels, others to purchase permanent upgrades, and others yet heal you. Mining minerals takes even longer than hacking walls, meaning hard decisions are gonna have to be made between health and gains. And I'm all about those gains. More than once my run ended because I got greedy for that little bit of gold I was trying to mine. And there you have it, the unequivocal top 3 in the survivors genre. Don't try to argue, just go and try these games. They're mostly super cheap. Check out here for the 11 best tactical turn-based strategy games, and here for the 11 best Resident Evil-like horror games, and I hope to see you in the next one.